question we covered a little bit because a few of you started talking about how you recruit your mentors, but we also want to talk about how to retain mentors and whether you think that they should be paid or unpaid, and if you have experience with either and what you think of that. So at this time I'm going to head down to Monique first.
For retaining mentors, we've been blessed with some funding to pay some of our students, some of our high schools, some of our college students. So I'll start with that. So we do pay our kids who are a part of the program a small stipend. They have to volunteer for every 5 hours they work. They have to volunteer at least an hour at a time. And so they're partnered with younger kids. They do tutoring, they do mentoring, they do recreational activities, they do cooking classes. So I think in that aspect, we're giving back to the kids who are a product of the program. And so, yeah, I think they should be paid. In regards to partnering with corporate partners and professional volunteers, a lot of them want to do the work. And that's why they reach out to us and they keep this long-term relationship. So, I mean, if there was funding available, I'm sure they would take the additional dollars. But they understand the situation that nonprofits are in. So I think they come in wanting to give, you know, and we've done things like, we're going to host this skating party, and we're going to host a dinner for these, you know, mentors to show that we appreciate them. And they're like, no, we want to be with the kids. Bring the kids to the skating party. Bring the kids to the bowling party. So, you know, there were ways, funding-wise, that we could give them some additional dollars to say, hey, we appreciate you. Here's $1 million. Thanks for the work you do. I'm sure they would take it, but I think genuinely they want to be there, and I think the payment is when they see the success of the kids and they see that, okay, I've made this investment, you know, I'm involved with the family now. Oh, look at Michael. He's, you know, he's graduating successfully from high school now. He's having problems. So to them, that's the payment. But for the kids who are part of the program, I think that helps us retain them because these are kids who are coming from low-income families. A mom is maybe working, you know, a grandma is maybe working. And so this helps supplement some of that income and it helps them. So I'm a little bit on the fence about, I think, yeah, if the kids are involved in the program, yeah, let's offer them some finances and support. But if you're, you know, just wanting to give to the organization as a volunteer, regular volunteer, then I think the payback is the outcome of the kid.
I'm so sorry, Dan, I missed you on that last question. So I'm going to go to your direction now. Go ahead and give us an answer to the last question as well and this one.
I'll actually try to combine the answer to the two questions at once. First, I preface what I say because on one side, I've led a single program. On the other side, I've created an organization trying to help hundreds of these kinds of programs be all over the city. And so what I hear from Kelly and what I hear from Monique and what I hear from you guys is what I hear from a lot of different organizations. My first partner was the Montgomery Ward Corporation. It was employees at Montgomery Ward who launched a tutoring program back in 1965. The company provided space for that program to operate in their basement cafeteria starting in 1970. I became involved as a volunteer in 1973 and then became the leader in 1975. And the company hosted tutoring programs there all the way up to 1999 when they went out of business. So operating a program within a corporate structure means that the volunteers leading the program were employees who had full-time jobs doing something else. But the program had access to all kinds of hand-me-downs, all kinds of attention from corporate officers. It was the ideal partnership because there was no cost of space. The facility was provided. The manpower, we were drawing from a huge pool of people. So that's an ideal partnership of where and how to operate a organization. When I became the leader of the program back in 1975, one of the officers of the company looked me in the eye and he said, Dan, you obviously don't know anything about leading a tutor mentor program. And I said, yes. And he said, but there must be other people in Chicago who do lead programs. Why don't you find them, invite them to lunch, and see what you can learn? So I began to reach out, and I found the Blue Gargoyle down here in Hyde Park, and I found the Fourth Presbyterian Church program, and at that point there were a couple of different corporate programs, and we started getting together for lunch. And over the years, we began to develop relationships, we began to learn from each other, we began to see that we all do the same thing at the same time, so why not do it together? And during these periods, my jobs were in corporate advertising, so we had a $200 million budget, so that every week we could do ads trying to draw customers to 400 stores in 40 different states. In our tutor mentor program, we were using the same tools of mass communications to communicate to our volunteers, to try to help them know what was going on, what information they needed to know, what we're going to do this week. But in the city, I began to see a pattern of, if you looked at the newspapers, you would see a camel effect. And the peak of the camel was when a little kid gets killed, or when a bad report card comes out on schools, and when the newspapers and the editorial people get indignant and say we got to do something. Well, those bad things happen all the time. It's only every now and then when it gets front page attention and editorial and everything. But when they do that, they were only talking about a few of the high poverty neighborhoods where these problems occur. They were only talking about a few of the brand name organizations working with kids, because no one had a list of who all the organizations were. And then they would turn their attention to something else. The front page of that Tribune cost $500,000. But if you don't keep spending that money every day, the customer forgets what you're talking about, and they don't shop at your store. So all the bad news editorials and all the indignation really wasn't doing much to try to draw volunteers and donors to our program or to the other programs in the city. So in 1992, when the little boy named Dantrell Davis got killed, we were just in this process of starting a new program, and we said, why don't we fill the void? Why don't we build a database of who all the different tutor mentor programs are in Chicago, and why don't we use that information to pull people together and try to learn from each other? And then why don't we try to find ways to get greater reach and frequency, more times talking about mentoring, more ways talking about mentoring, that pointed to all of the programs, not just to one or two high-profile programs. And so we began to build the database in 1994, and we asked programs, how much contact do you have with peers? Half of them said little or none. 90% said they would like to have more contact. They'd come to a conference. So we began organizing a conference in May of 1994. 70 people came, just like us here today. We're sharing what we know with each other and with you guys. Well, enough people said it's a good idea, so we did it again in November. We had 200 people. We've been doing that conference every 6 months since then. When the last one was last November. If we can find some money in a place, we'll do it again this May. But through that process, it's nothing more than inviting the people who have stories to tell to come and tell their stories to each other, and to try to use that to create a TV coverage or something that would tell the story to all the people who aren't there. So out of this, there becomes all kinds of partnerships, all kinds of opportunities, all kinds of, boy, I love what she's doing. How do I do it in my program? I love what she's doing. How do I do it in my program? How do we turn this into awareness and storytelling that would cause more people who have the ability to help us to be there with the resources, so that when we got a good idea, we can put that good idea to work right away. So then when we talk about volunteer involvement in these different programs, the best recruiter is your own volunteers. A satisfied customer is someone who will go to their family, their friends, their company, and say, this is really good, why don't you come and join us? So we've always focused on our own volunteers first, and we found ways to expand the leadership. Instead of a few people doing it all, we tried to create an organizational structure where a lot of different people have a role. And it tried to create ownership of the organization in more people, then more people use that ownership and have an enthusiasm to what they do. So depending on what our mix of volunteers is on any given day, there could be volunteers teaching technology, there could be volunteers teaching video, there could be, we had a Spanish volunteer one time, so we had Spanish lessons, and we were teaching some sort of Spanish dance. So, and it's the volunteers sharing the enthusiasm for what they do that's what mentoring is all about. Because in the neighborhoods where I feel these programs have the greatest amount of need, which is in high poverty neighborhoods, poverty by itself is a segregated one kind of people. They're poor. There aren't a lot of people modeling all the different kinds of things kids could be, and there won't be unless these programs are available with all kinds of volunteers enthusiastic about what they are and sharing that enthusiasm to say to kids, you can be that too. And as the kids grow up, if we can keep those volunteers connected, those volunteers can begin to help open doors. And that's why the long-term programs, your program's been around for years, your program, our ability that programs are here for decades, not for 1 or 2 or 3 years. And that would take a big village working to make that happen, which makes it a huge partnership.
Well, I think it's really important also to emphasize that the mentors can enjoy each other. I really enjoy mentoring with the other young woman, who comes to mentor the same family that I do. And there was another woman who was a mentor for a while, and I enjoyed her company also. And we can talk and get to know each other, and we get ideas from each other. And when, for instance, we have two mentors to a family at least, and each have different strengths, things that we can offer, different perspectives. So that's helpful. And I agree, I think it's really important to share the experience with others, how satisfying it is. It can be fun. I mean, Laura is really fun, I have to say. And we can talk for a long time. So that's what I have to add to that. Yep.
I think when it comes to recruitment and retention, what I've learned thus far is a model that I use when I'm doing orientations for new mentors, and that's everyone is a mentor. And I got that story from my great-grandmother. Her name was Maggie Peoples, but we all called her Nana. And Nana grew up on the far south side of the Morgan Park neighborhood. Nana didn't finish grammar school, and she worked, as a domestic in the Beverly Hills neighborhood for, most of her life. But she was a member of her church, Arnett Chapel, and Arnett Chapel started a girls mentoring program. Nana had been on the usher board for years. I mean, she was one of the main cooks in the basement when the church would have dinners and different things like that, so everybody knew Nana. But when they asked the women to stand up in the congregation who would be willing to mentor, they asked the girls to go stand next to the person that they wanted to mentor them. Nana could not believe that a young lady came and stood next to her. I mean, because the main thing she thought of is, I'm not educated, I don't have that kind of job, all these different things. And, but Nana had been committed to her post on the usher board. She was one of the ladies who give you an extra piece of chicken, on your plate. So there were things that, because I had a mentor that told me, they're always watching and we're always teaching. So even in moments that she didn't think she was teaching, she was in fact teaching. The girls were watching her and they admired her. And I think that story is important as we're talking about retention, recruitment, how do we enhance and get the word out that mentoring is important, we need you, is we really have to be very specific with this message for people so that they understand everybody has a role. And as we've been talking about it, mentoring has become a sexy new topic to talk about. And you get a lot of syndicated radio hosts, a lot of celebrities and things involved. I think we have to be very careful that we don't just paint mentors to be white-collar professionals who work at large corporations who have these type of degrees or those type of degrees. The bus driver is a mentor. The old lady that lives on your block is a mentor. Kids have to understand, and kids get that intuitively. We have to remember that these people are important mentors, and that has to be part of our message. So when I'm in balance and somebody compliments my outfit or, ask me what I do, I have to be passionate and always be on the lookout for the next mentor. It does not mean that maybe they're not the match for 3rd through 5th graders, and maybe they're not work for teenagers, but perhaps, like Dan said, they have a skill set that they can offer the organization. We cannot afford what's going on with our young people when it comes to violence, when it comes to education. You can't afford to turn people down. And we use wisdom, of course, in how we select, how we train, and how we prep. But everybody's a mentor, and it can't be about me. It can't be about my personality as the founder. It can't be all that. It has to be me as a leader constantly looking and being receptive to what these individuals have to bring to the organization. And I think that's a huge part of retention, is allowing them the ownership. They think of stuff way better than you. As you're still trying to grow it, you're burnt out. But thank God that these people here still see themselves as mentors or a vital part of your